Welcome to the latest episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. This is episode 199, Health Halo Hype, when food swaps miss the point. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Real World Nutrition Podcast. I'm Shelly Rael, registered dietitian nutritionist, and in this episode, I want to talk about two related topics that I believe are important to unpack. So first up would be the health halo effect in food marketing. And then second, the more significant issue of food insecurity. So first up, I want to address the health halo. I did an episode of this way back in 2022 talking about the health halo effect, but I'm going to switch gears on obviously the content of what was in that, and talk about what this means and what it means now in 2025 with a little bit more context. So you've probably seen advertisements for food that say they're made with, quote, real ingredients, or tout that they're free of artificial colors or natural, or even where I've seen that, this was back in years ago where I would see people buying cases of soda that say throwback or made with real cane sugar. Now, these labels are often giving the impression that the food is somehow healthier than other versions. And while some people may think I'm taking this as a slant that people are getting the impression of this, I have spoken to people who are surprised to find out that their soda made with real cane sugar is not healthier. There is nothing that ever says it's healthier, but there's this implication, or what we call the health halo, where people believe something to be healthier because of these buzzwords. So when people change one or two ingredients or use natural, it may still be a low nutrient food. I'll admit, earlier today I had the natural Cheetos. I like them. I like Cheetos, and I joke that the only thing that makes them better is they don't turn my fingers orange. It's just a lighter color. They're still Cheetos. So when we have this idea of changing some ingredients or having this natural label to it or free of artificial colors, this idea that it's healthier is not usually accurate. For example, Fruit Loops may remove their synthetic dyes and instead use fruit and vegetable-based colorings. But it's Fruit Loops. Changing the type of coloring in Fruit Loops doesn't change the nutrient content of it. It's still a cereal loaded with added sugars. And changing what type of dye is in it doesn't make it a healthy breakfast option. And sure, I know a lot of people aren't saying, Fruit Loops aren't healthy, but we've got to get rid of the dyes. I'll get to that part in a minute. I also say, same goes for Skittles. Change the dyes, it's still candy. But I also want to mention this. Take the recent announcement from Coca-Cola that they're going to be starting to use cane sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup. And what does this mean? Well, not using high fructose corn syrup, which is an affordable, low-cost option, low-cost added sugar option, is going to change the cost of Coca-Cola significantly. And no, there is no difference nutritionally speaking or how the body metabolizes cane sugar versus high fructose corn syrup. It's not going to make it any healthier. And here's what it is going to do. Earlier today, I was at Costco, and at least at my Costco, my local Costco, they sell Mexican Coke by the case. And if you don't have that in your area, Mexican Coke is Coca-Cola from Mexico, the type of Coke that's made for Mexico. that does use real cane sugar, has for years. We talk about Mexican Coke all the time, and you can only get it in some places. And because Mexican Coke uses sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup, I actually looked today because of this discussion that's going on these days. And Costco breaks down the price per unit for several items. I didn't even pay attention to what the cost of the case was, but I did notice that per bottle, a bottle of Mexican Coke is $1.40 per bottle. So, yes, maybe it's the kind that's made for Mexico, but what does that mean when Coca-Cola changes from high fructose corn syrup to cane sugar in all of their products? If it's $1.40 a bottle at Costco, I can't imagine what it would cost out in the general public, the larger bottles, that sort of thing. So again, it's not changing anything nutritionally. It's just changing an ingredient and going to increase the cost. So sugar is sugar. Your body does not know where it came from. It doesn't know it came from corn. It doesn't know it came from sugar cane. The only thing that will change is the price. And no, Coca-Cola is not a healthy product. I'm not going to even claim that. Nobody in their right mind would claim it is. It's just, I would like to enjoy a Coke once in a while, and I don't want to have to take out a loan to do so. But this idea that somehow this is improving on it is erroneous. It plays into this idea that changing or removing an ingredient makes the food better, but it doesn't. What actually matters more is the context. How often someone eats the food, what else they're eating, and what their overall access to nutritious food looks like. So I have the privilege of being able to enjoy whatever type of Coke I want on occasion, as I do. I have the privilege of enjoying my Cheetos, and I don't necessarily care whether they're regular Cheetos or not. It's more puff versus crunchy. And I just happen to buy the natural ones, but I don't eat Cheetos all that often. So again, context matters. So this part of talking about whether a food changing ingredient is going to make the food healthier is more addressing or switching to the second part here, where I want to know or help people have access to nutritious foods. So that's the second part of this. What is much more important of today's conversation is food insecurity. So making this fuss over which type of sugar and soda is being used, or removing food dyes from sugar-sweetened cereals, and we have millions of people, including children, millions of children in the United States alone who do not have access to healthy food. They do not have regular access to healthy food. So just today, in July 2025, from the Feeding America website, which I'll link in the show notes, this is 2025 information. More than 47 million people in the United States face food insecurity. This means experiencing daily challenges with hunger and its health impacts. This 47 million includes over 13 million children, or 1 in 5 children who don't have enough food to grow up healthy. And in the United States, so I'm just focusing on the United States, not other tragedies around the world where people are dying from malnutrition. In the United States, every single county in the United States is affected by food insecurity. So to reiterate, food insecurity means not having consistent access to enough food for an active, healthy life. So this doesn't just mean hunger. It means including access to and being able to afford nutritious options. So that's a big key here. So if somebody gets $5 a day for food, what does that get them? They may be able to get 2,000 calories at a fast food restaurant. It's certainly not healthy. Nobody's going to claim that, but it's going to help fill them up. Where if you go to a grocery store, if you can even get to a grocery store, that $5 is not going to get you much. So again, it's not just not having food, but being able to afford or access nutritious options. So there's many things that affect this. It can be not having enough income. So, of course, as much as people complain about homelessness or people being unhoused, I myself included, people want to have shelter, so they have to pay their rent, and they have to have heat, and they have to have running water. If most of their income is going to that, food is a luxury at that point when it's really an essential part of life. It can mean the high cost of living. If food insecurity is affecting every single county in the United States, that high cost of living, that means in some of these really, really pricey places in our country, the cost of living is so high, people can't afford to get enough food. So, and then the other part is where we live. So, every county affected, sure. But what about living in a food desert? And this means having a grocery store, access to a grocery store within 1 mile of where you live. And for some of us, a mile's no big deal. A mile from my house is no big deal. It takes me 3 minutes to get there in my car. But if people don't have a car, there's not enough public transportation. A mile is a decent amount, especially if you want to have fresh food. So when people can live in a food desert, that could be living in a very remote part of the country, and you have to drive quite a ways to get to a grocery store. Or it could be in some parts within a city or an urban area in which crime can be high, or there's just not enough stores that carry groceries within that small area. So when it comes down to it, the reality is when people are facing food insecurity, an ingredient swap in an ultra-processed food is not going to do anything. If they can't afford to buy healthy cereal and Fruit Loops or the generic version of it is what's available to them, it's not going to matter how that stuff is colored. It doesn't. And sure, one can argue, why do we need to have it colored? Well, humans they want their foods to look a certain way. It's been tried in the past. It doesn't matter if Coke is changing from high fructose corn syrup to sugar, to cane sugar, if people don't have access to a piece of fruit. So while there's these things that are happening on the national level in the United States, we really need to focus on access to real foods, not highly processed foods, nourishing foods, not fast foods. I mean, it can be fast food, but really nourishing food, fresh produce, whole grains, lean protein, dairy or dairy alternatives, food that promote health, growth, and energy. So this is an example of where we have the national school lunch programs, the national school breakfast programs. And in a lot of communities, there are children, those are the only 2 meals they get during the day. And on the weekends, it may be risky that they're not getting meals over the weekend. So when we focus on hunger and food access, that's certainly more important, at least in my professional opinion as a dietitian and, last time I checked, a human being. So making these small changes to processed foods might look good in a press release, a social media post, or people of privilege who think they're doing good, but it doesn't do much for public health. If we want real change, we have to focus on structural solutions. social determinants of health. This would be policies that support food assistance programs, school meals, community gardens, access to grocery stores in underserved areas. So instead of stressing about whether you can pronounce an ingredient on any food label, let's zoom out and let's talk access. Let's ask how we're supporting food systems and programs that make nutritious foods available and affordable to everyone, not just those who can shop at an upscale, prestigious pricing grocery store. All right, everyone, this is a topic that I'm pretty passionate about. I shouldn't say I never realized, but more recently, I was talking about this discussion of food access and food insecurity in a class I was teaching. And as much as I was getting riled up, it really brought to the surface how much this is just such a tragedy, in my opinion, that children are not getting access to food while people of privilege are arguing about what specific ingredients should or should not be allowed. So with that, as I said, I'm providing a link in the show notes for Feeding America, which is a nationwide organization of food banks, which also has the food banks within your area in most cases. I know the name of my food bank in my state that distributes to the whole state. But if you want to go there, link and see how you can help. I'm getting nothing in return for this other than sharing the information. I would encourage you to at least look at some of the statistics and what can be done about that. And if this is something where you're worried about food ingredients, great. That is something you're able to do. And let's make sure other people can have access to food as well. So, thanks for listening to today's episode. Please, if you found this helpful, share it with somebody who might need a new perspective here. And as always, if you want more real-world nutrition info, I post 3 blogs a week. You can find those on ShellyRael.com, or you can follow me wherever you are on social media. You probably can find me there. Those are linked in the show notes as well. All right, everyone. That's it for this week's episode. Take care and bye for now.